Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Lenin and Families Committee meeting of the 24th of August. I understand Councillor Duff is substituting for Councillor Shires. Have we any more substitutions and or apologies, please, Danny?
Thank you, Convener. No, that's the only substitute we have and apology we have in terms of elected members. We do have a couple of apologies from our non-council members. So Adrian Ferguson and Theresa Moran have both submitted their apologies.
Thank you, Danny. Any declarations of interest from members, please? None at all. Thank you. Can we approve the minute of the meeting of the Lenin and Families Committee of 29th June 2022? Are they agreed? Thank you. Can we agree the minute of the joint negotiating committee for teaching staff of 22nd March 2022? I was there. I can agree them. Thank you. And can we agree the minute of the meeting of the Children, Young People and Families Partnership of 4th of March 2022? Thank you. Item number 4 is the outstanding business statements, which you'll have seen for noting. I don't think we need to do anything else unless anybody has anything to say about that. But if everybody's agreeable, we'll just note the outstanding business statements, which are all completed, I believe. Thank you, Councillor Duff. And we'll move on to the main item of the day, which is the Perth and Conross Education Improvement Plan, which will be introduced by Sheena Devlin, the Executive Director. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener, and good afternoon, everybody. Just check that everybody at home can hear me. Thank you. Each year, the Scottish Government requires education authorities, in this case Education and Children's Services here in Perth and Conross, to publish their performance over the past year and to submit to them a report setting out how the service will deliver the commitments of the National Improvement Framework. This Education Improvement Plan must be submitted to the Scottish Government by the 30th of September 2022. This report introduces the plan proposed for 22-23 in Appendix 1 to the report. It includes information on the delivery of last year's plan, highlighting what was able to be achieved despite the challenges that faced us through the COVID pandemic. And despite COVID, progress continued to be made. Senior phase attainment was assessed through a traditional exam diet for the first time since the 2018-19 session. And achievement of curriculum for excellence levels of progression were also able to be assessed fully to measure progress in both literacy and numeracy. The improvement plan provided at Appendix 1 sets out under the National Improvement Framework priorities the intended outcomes that Perth and Kinross Council Education Services plan to deliver in the next year. There are a number of officers here in the chamber and online who are able to take questions on the report and on Appendix 1. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Sheena. Chris and Councillor Bailey O'Hearn, I'll get that right eventually. Bailey O'Hearn, I think you have 4 questions, but we'll do them one at a time, if we may.
Thank you very much. My first question is on the report, on the paper, and it's on page 26 with regards to virtual campuses. Can I ask how many pupils have actually participated so far? And have there been any issues with the timetabling? And also what plans there are to develop and grow the virtual campus?
David McCluskey's online, I think. Maybe, David, do you want to say something about that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know the exact figures in front of me for the numbers of pupils that participated last year, but what I do know is that the attainment of those young people who participated in virtual campuses was good. I can tell you that the virtual campus footprint in Perth and Conross has grown this year. We're planning for a larger footprint of virtual campus courses. So if you're a young person in Perth and Conross, you'll be offered a total of 17 different virtual campus courses. 11 of them are our own in-house offer at PKC, and 6 of them are in conjunction with our partners across Tayside, and they're going to be offered at a variety of different levels for young people.
Thank you, David.
Can you ask a bit about the timetabling, whether there's been issues in trying to timetable it?
David?
Yep, I'm absolutely happy to answer that. No, there haven't been any issues in timetabling virtual campus, and that's because the offer thus far has been largely based upon asynchronous learning. So that's based upon a model of anywhere, anytime learning with support for young people from individual teachers when they can best access that. So we haven't encountered any timetabling difficulties at all.
Thank you, David. Question number 2, Chris. Well, you go for number 2, and then Councillor Barrett, I'll bring you in after that, please.
Thank you. My next 3 questions, unsurprisingly, are on additional support needs and are part of the plan. Page 46, which is page 13 of the report, is about the availability of outreach support for children with social, emotional and behavioural needs, and specifies ASD and ADHD. Can I ask how the pupils are getting picked out in terms of having additional support needs when it's very difficult at primary age to diagnose children with additional support needs? So I wonder how they've been assessed as requiring the support, and what's happening in secondary schools, because it only mentions primary school.
Sharon, please.
Thank you. In terms of assessing children with additional support needs, you're quite right, Bailey Ahern. There are different assessment processes depending on the age and stage of children, and where children are very young, then it's related to their developmental milestones, and where children are not meeting those developmental milestones, all teachers are very well aware of what needs to be put in place for children and young people, irrespective, in fact, of an assessment. So when children are young, taking into account their developmental milestones, additional support is put in place by the class teacher. If other support is required, then we would ask for other partners. If there's a very early indication of significant needs, we introduce support from NHS partners, our own educational psychology service. And so therefore the assessment of children with additional support needs will be based very much on the complexity at the time of the age and the stage of need. So that's the assessment process. So we always start with the most least intrusive methods within a classroom with the skills of a class teacher in the first instance. We then move out to look at specialist teachers who can provide that additional support. Then we move into support from partners, health professionals and our educational psychology service. The support that you talked about in the report is about additional teaching staff for primary aged pupils for children with ASD and ADHD. We've also have a different arrangement in secondary schools. We have pupil support departments. In primary schools, it's not as easy to provide that level of support in a small primary school. That's why we have a different model of support for primary aged pupils. So within a secondary school, there are pupil support teachers already in place within a secondary school to support those children who have those needs on site, whereas in our primary schools, they're a peripatetic team, but they do virtually the same job. But obviously, because of different ages and stages, they work differently. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. I just want to pick up on the assessment process, and I just wonder whether that's an educational assessment or leading towards a clinical assessment, and whether you refer for clinical assessment in conjunction with the families, because obviously it requires the families' support in terms of trying to get a clinical assessment. But that would help, because it's very difficult for children of a young age through a parent without getting support from another agency to get the assessment. And it would be extremely helpful if that's what the process is, that the education are picking up in the classroom that requires an additional support needs assessment through the clinical and trying to get a clinical diagnosis.
Jan.
Yes, and indeed we do that, Councillor Ahern. What happens is that a class teacher identifies additional support needs, and if there is a further requirement, then we absolutely work with families through the child's planning process. There's a very well-established process about how we might do an assessment. Sometimes it's through our educational psychology team, and sometimes it's with the family and through their GP. And of course, we have relationships through our CSP process with NHS partners. So there are a variety of ways of doing it, and depending on the complexity of need and the level of need, then we take a step-by-step process, or we move straight to a clinical diagnosis.
Are questions 3 and 4 related?
They're on different parts.
Thank you. Councillor Barrett, Councillor Liz Barrett then, please.
Thank you, Convener. First of all, I'd just like to say thank you to everybody for the preparation of the report and plan. Thanks to all the officers and thanks to everyone who's doing all they are to implement this. If you could pass that on, Sheena, that would be great. I just wanted to point to highlight the report recognises the importance of improvements to digital learning and infrastructure and the building of digital capacity referred to on page 52. And at parent councils, I'm often asked what's happening about implementation of the SNP government's promise of a device for every pupil. Could we have an update on this, please?
Thanks, Councillor Barrett. I'll answer that. Yeah, the Scottish Government have committed to supply a device to every child by the end of this parliamentary term. We're 1 year into it. There's a lot of stuff going on with cost of living crisis. If we get towards the end of that term and we're not delivering it, I'm quite happy to take stick for that. In the meantime, we will be urging colleagues in the Scottish Government to deliver it as soon as possible. And I think Sheena Devlin wants to add a little bit to that. Thank you.
Councillor Barrett, it's probably helpful if I share with you and the rest of the committee that we are doing quite a bit of what I would call preparation work in advance of the allocation of one-to-one devices. Now, some of that is around our physical digital infrastructure in schools and technology upgrades that are required in different locations. And a really important part of our preparation is around focusing on the approaches to learning and teaching that will be used, because we recognise that a digital device, whatever that digital device is only going to be as effective as it can be in the hands of a skilled practitioner to really stretch pupils' learning with that. So we're already engaging in support and development for teaching and support staff in readiness for the rollout of that programme. Thank you.
Thanks, Sheena. And just to reiterate, it is an important question, Councillor Barrett. I absolutely get that, and it's important that it's delivered in due course. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a question that's been coming up since last year at meetings. Thank you.
Not at all. Councillor Duff, maybe at this point, please.
Thank you, Convener. My question is in relation to the health and wellbeing census. It's referred to in a variety of areas throughout the report, and I just wondered if we could have a comment about the information provided by the census, whether it's been useful, and maybe an example of what has been learned and how it will be used. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheena. If you answer that, please.
Councillor Duff, the census was carried out across respective primary stages and indeed in all of our secondary schools as well. And the uptake of that was very high. So that has given us really good information from the voices of young people, which of course is really important to understand from their perspective what are the live issues as they see them, and also what areas of their lives are going well, and also what they would like to see improved. We have done a pretty detailed analysis so far of the results that we have received, and of course all of that information will then be fed into the development of our next iteration of our health and wellbeing strategy and action plan in the council. What we would be very happy to do, because we know that nationally results will be published in relation to that census later this year, and it may be of interest to the committee that we undertake a presentation with you to share with you the key messages that came through from a Perth and Conross level perspective and what we're actually doing with that information. So that might be something that this committee would like to take up the offer of. Hope that's helpful.
So I think that would be very helpful, but perhaps you could expand it out to all elected members if they wish to attend. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. The only thing I would add, and it's maybe conversational, but I was on the parent council at Our Ladies when evidence of success was first mooted, and there was a lot of conversation about that. But I think the lesson to be learned is that evidence-based policy is definitely the way to go, and so I would back the wellbeing survey. Councillor Ahern, can we have question 3, please?
Thank you very much. The last 2 questions I have, and I'll just ask the first one, is regarding the timetable and delivery scales. Page 23, the last 2 there about children and young people who have their needs identified and assessed and met by skilled and confident staff, and the partnership working. It's the first part is delivery for April 23, which is almost at the end of this school year, and I wonder what work had been done up until now and whether these timescales that we see in here are realistic. And also with the partnership working, what's the progress? It's January 23, so we're only a few months away. So what progress are we at? And which third sector organisations are we working with?
I think there were 3 bits in that one question, Bailey Ahern. So I'm going to ask Sharon Johnson to pick up on the question about the timescales. But what I would say in relation to the April 23, what we're actually saying there is to further extend. So it's a continuation and a further development of the kind of opportunities that are already being made to staff. So it's not that there's nothing being done at this moment in time, but that is further work with particular groups of staff. And in terms of the third sector organisations and the other question that you asked that I have now forgotten, I have to say, but Sharon will have noted that. I'll pass to her. Thank you.
Thank you, Bailey Ahern. As Executive Director, it is correct. We obviously continue to develop our staff professionally in relation to additional support needs. This particular target for this year is in response to the survey that we did with our staff when we asked them, which we do on a regular basis, what they felt they needed in terms of professional support and development. And one of the issues that has come through nationally and not just within Perth and Kinross is further support to support the children and young people in our schools who have got social, emotional and behavioural needs. And that has come up as a need across our local authority. And so where we're talking about a timescale for that is that we're putting in additional training for all staff in relation to managing children's behaviour when they're struggling to manage that for themselves. So that's one of the key areas of training for this year in terms of professional support and development. And the nurture teachers that we have moved into a primary outreach team are part of that support. We're working very closely with PAS to deliver that training, and we're using other external agencies too. Also Education Scotland and national resources as well. It is a key priority for us across our ASN planning for this year, but we can't do everything all of the time. This is our real focus for this year in terms of social and emotional development. You did ask about partnerships, and we were strengthening our partnerships as well this year. With 2 years of a pandemic, we've been hampered somewhat in the plans that we had put in place 2 years ago to develop good, strong partnerships. And we're doing that in 2 ways. One is that we're strengthening our third sector involvement in PEF planning. And secondly, we are looking to develop stronger networks with our partners to deliver for additional support needs. And Fiona Mackay can give some further information about the partnerships that we're developing.
Good afternoon. So we already, as Sharon said, have a number of different partners that we work with on a regular basis through either contracts, service level agreements, or other arrangements on just working in partnership. They extend both across education and children's services, but also with services for children, young people and families. And it's supporting us to begin to expand that even further as we go. Shannon's mentioned the work that's ongoing to support partnership working through PEF, but it is also about looking to how we can collaborate and develop opportunities going forward as well. And that might be about the support for third sector partners who are looking to bring in external funding should opportunities come up. Last year, we worked closely with a group of third sector partners who came together with our support to support improvement in outcomes in terms of re-engaging young people after the COVID pandemic. That involved a number of youth work partners, but also Perth Autism, young carers, as well to look to strengthen that. And they then were able to draw down additional funding from the Scottish Government that allowed the expansion of services within Perth and Kinross that were independent of the local authority but working closely with us. And our opportunity to have a network to continue to develop that approach where we're working together is to be an area for our development over the next year. Our timescale for that has been established is quite short. It's January 2023, and that's because a lot of work has already been underway, but it is about the formal establishment of it by that date.
Thank you, Fiona. Councillor Kigali.
Yeah, on page 33, there's reference to the 1,100 pupils P5 and over who are registered for free school meals. There have been delays in the provision for the school meals for P6 and P7 due to the underfunding of the capital works needed to provide the increased number of meals. Can we have an update on that, please?
I'm not in a position to give you an update in terms of if you're asking about the rollout of P6 and 7. Councillor Kigali, I don't have an update on that, I'm afraid.
I think the only thing I would add is it's similar to devices for pupils. It's something that Scottish Government's keen to do. We will canvass colleagues in government to deliver it as soon as it's practically possible. It's important that it's done, and we'll try and make sure it is. Thank you.
I'm not in a position to give an update in terms of what the national position is, Councillor Kigali, but what I can say is that in Perth and Conross, we have a programme that has been developed, so we know what works are required to be done in which schools and to what extent, and the kind of timescales that we think are associated with that. So that plan is there and ready to be enacted.
Thank you, Sheila. Councillor Stewart, please.
Thanks, convener. In the appendix, the actual improvement plan itself, I think it's quite helpfully laid out in terms of setting out what the what the priorities and progress against the priorities from last year were, and then what the priorities for this year are. But I wonder, where we've got progress against the key priorities, is that all of the priorities, or is it just, have you just selected certain ones to update on selectively? Because I think it would be important to have a full picture in determining what the priorities for the following year should be.
The work in terms of how we report is also reported through things like the BMIP, and there's detail in the BMIP. But our BMIP work is based on this and transfers into that. So we are reporting on all of the areas that we have considered to be a priority in terms of where we've made progress.
Councillor Stewart.
Yeah, thank you for that response. I think it would also be helpful when we look at the following year's priorities to maybe have some things which are have targets which are measurable. You know, we've got obviously desirable outcomes such as, you know, the equity gap in attainment of children and young people will be reduced, but, you know, are we going to reduce it by 5% or 50%, or, you know, that would be helpful going forward. But my actual question was, just Director, you mentioned that you mentioned in passing reference to the Education and Children's Services Business Management Improvement Plan. That was something that we considered, I think, at the last meeting. At this meeting, we're considering the Education Improvement Plan or Education Service Improvement Plan, depending which bit you look at. We've also got the Raising Attainment Strategy and the Tayside Regional Improvement Plan. Is there a possibility that with so many different strategies and plans, we lose focus on what we're actually meant to be achieving in terms of improving attainment.
A 50% reduction in attainment gap would be nice, but we're not promising. Sheila.
The detail that you reference, going back to the measurable targets, that detail actually features in the Raising Attainment Strategy, Councillor Stewart. So that is where we actually have, if you like, nailed our colours to the mast to say, in terms of the excellence and equity agenda, you know, closing gaps, because there's not a gap. There are various different gaps by X amount, by whenever, or raising levels of literacy and numeracy by X amount, by whenever. So that specificity actually does appear in one of the many plans and reports that you mentioned. The trick for us, if you like, the skill that we employ is looking at making sure that where we are reporting on key bits of information, it's one source of information reported in different places for different audiences, so that there shouldn't be that distillation or that losing of that important information, because it would also feature in the corporate plan and the annual performance report, for example. We also consider the local government benchmarking framework and do that. So what we seek to do is have a core set, if you like, of information and data pertaining to that we are able to use in a whole load of different places. And you mentioned a range of different plans. Because we're also an education authority as part of a local authority, there are a number of things that we're statutorily required to produce, this being one of them, and other strategies as well. So we try to make sure that what we're not doing is having different information in different ones, but using the right information for multiple purposes.
Thank you.
Councillor Reid, please.
Thank you, Convener. I just want to refer to NHS Tayside. Can I ask officers how comprehensive the support which is given by NHS Tayside regarding mental health concerns is?
I can pick up on that, Convener. Councillor Reid, I can confirm that what we have is are colleagues from NHS Tayside who are core members of the Children and Young People and Families Partnership. And that's a really important connection, because through that partnership, important decisions are made, sharing of information, sharing of practice. So through that particular group, we have strong partnership working with some colleagues from NHS Tayside. Likewise, as part of the Tayside Regional Improvement Collaborative, we have a number of colleagues from NHS Tayside who actually lead on the priority group work around health and well-being, and that covers things like tackling obesity and supporting young people with mental health and well-being. And at the more acute end, the work that we have been engaged in with our colleagues in CAMS in recent times has really begun to develop further, and there's certainly evidence of stronger partnership working there, I would say. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. Councillor Hearn, please.
Thank you very much. Yeah, my last question is on regarding the comments on page 24 with regards to the additional support needs parents network, something that I think is extremely important over the years. And I suppose a lot of you know that I get very involved in additional supports outside of council work, and it's something that's been asked for a long time, is parents to have more of an engagement with schools, and I really welcome this. So part of the question is, what's the progress? It's going to be finished or hopefully delivered by December 2022. However, I have a number of questions. Potentially, it can be a huge network with parents, and I just wonder whether you're looking at it by diagnosis, by age, by the school they're in, and then the services available in different schools, or by area. It has a potential to be too worldly, but then you need to have it small enough to be able to cover all those sort of different aspects of it. Thank you.
Sharon, please.
Thank you. You're absolutely right. Again, it could be extremely unwieldy and very difficult to manage. And so we are looking at this very carefully, because we do want to make sure that we hear all voices. And again, because of the pandemic, some of that got lost and some of it got strengthened through online means. So what we're looking to do is we're looking to try and pull together a more strategic approach to the way that we listen to parents and families where there are additional support needs. So within every school there is a parent council, and what we've been doing over a number of years is where we meet with our parent council chairs network on a regular basis. We talk about additional support needs and the role of parent councils in making sure of their role in allowing parents who've got additional support needs to be part of that process. And that's about helping them to engage more fully with parents who perhaps do not routinely form part of parent council. So we're working hard with our parent council chairs to make sure that in every school that parents of children with additional support needs are met. Our parenting and family learning team is another really strong advocate for us in making sure that we reach parents who need to be heard. And so we're strengthening how we gather that information. We're using online means. And so therefore we'll use the consultation hub, so that if there's a specific area of interest for parents with a specific need, such as dyslexia or something else, then parents can opt in to share their views in that way rather than come to meetings. But what we're also doing is we're pulling together a reference group, if you like. So there are a number of already established networks within Perth and Kinross who have come together because their children and families share similar issues. We also have parent to parent and all of the third sector organisations that we previously mentioned. So we're working with them to make sure that where we're looking for views or needing to hear the voices of parents and families, that we stretch into those networks, and we'll use a variety of means to do that. But what we will have is a virtual ASN parents reference group, if you like, Councillor Ahern. And the details still to be worked out, but that's the approach that we're going to take, so that people do not have to come if it doesn't interest them, but where there is an area of interest, if there's something that we specifically want to ask about that will directly affect their families, we have that network of information and intelligence that we know where to go to ask for that.
Thank you, Shan. Thank you for your questions on this, Bailey Ahern. I know that your passion on it is genuine and it's to be commended. If I can reassure you that this administration absolutely believes in inclusion, and where we can offer even better support than is already there for it, we will do so. It crosses political boundaries, and we're determined to support officers wherever we can.
Thank you very much, and especially the last question I asked about the Parents Network. It has been something parents have asked for a long time. Even when my youngest son was in primary school, which is a long time ago, and I'm glad to see that the Perth and Kinross Council are moving that forward. I'd be very interested to have a report back to this committee as to how that works at some point next year.
Well, engagement between schools and parents is always important, but even more so in the context of this conversation. So points noted, Bailey Ahern.
Absolutely, thank you.
Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Convener. I was just seeking a point of clarification, really, on page 6 under the heading of poverty. The statistics that have been compiled there, I do note that there is a cost of living, there is reference made to the cost of living crisis, but I was just wondering if those statistics, how up to date those statistics are, and sort of roughly when they were sort of collated.
James, please, are you able to comment on that? I think James is there.
While we're waiting for James to give you the specifics around the timeline for those, what would be fair to say is that it's a moving situation, Councillor McPherson, so it's something that we keep under very, very close review through the work that we do with our child poverty team and also with schools directly. So it's something that is constantly updated.
With you.
Sorry, I was just going to say, Convener, if James is not able to provide us with that information today, then we would action to provide that to all members of the committee following this meeting.
And with your permission, Councillor McPherson, we'll move on in the meantime, if that's okay. Thank you. Councillor Duff, please, second question.
Thanks. That was a nice segue into the cost of living question that I was going to actually ask as well. Obviously, the cost of living crisis is likely to impact on our children and young people's education. And I'm aware of a number of the tools which schools can rely on to help address, say, these issues. I just wondered if there's any further practical measures which we intend to introduce to support schools and head teachers faced with the forthcoming situation. Thank you.
The short answer is yes. Wouldn't like to promise any detail on that yet, but yeah, absolutely. The cost of living crisis will impact on our kids, it'll impact on the schools. And so, yeah, we will do as much as we possibly can, set within the parameters of the budgets that we're working with. Sheena, do you want to expand on that?
For a number of years, Councillor Duff, we have been working with schools to help families, if you like, and I would have to say schools are very, very good at that. So from the provision of clothing, there's a number of course organisations established now across Perth and Conross who also support with that, Social Flock being one of them, and we work to support Social Flock in their genuine endeavours to make sure that young people have the appropriate clothing for coming to school. We take a particular focus on that obviously in the coming autumn and winter months, and we'll be providing support through that as well. Reducing costs of the school day and participation in any activities at the school day has been a feature that we've been undertaking. We've also been able to use the Scottish Government funding to address the issue of charging for curricular activities that are part of the core curriculum, and that no longer now is a feature of any of our secondary schools. So there have been a range of things, but we are currently, as I mentioned in relation to Councillor McPherson's question, very aware that it's a changing situation and that we're needing to continually monitor and broaden what we do. One of the key partnerships that we have in Education and Children's Services is with our colleagues in the Welfare Rights team, and we do lots of partnership working around income maximisation for families with children and young people. So there's quite a range of supports, but we are always looking to do more, and we will need to continue to look to do more.
Okay. Thank you, Sheena. And I would just very briefly add, if I may, if I can allow to be parochial just for a second. I was at Goodlibin Primary School this morning at the Gaelic unit, and you would have been a valuable asset because I hadn't a clue what the kids were speaking about. But the £100,000 or so Pupil Equity Fund that school makes a huge difference in the context of this conversation. And I could point out to the £104,000 that was supported across the chamber for holiday activity clubs, or the £20,000 which was seconded by Councillor Leishman there in terms of school clothing grants. But you're right, it will be an issue and it will be an ongoing issue, and we have to do as much as we possibly can. Thank you, Councillor Duff. I will switch my microphone on before I do it. I think we deliver education pretty well in Perth and Kinross, and there are many examples of that in this report. But clearly there's no room for complacency, and there's always room for improvement. We don't quite yet get it right for every child. Getting it right for every child is a challenging aspiration, but it's an entirely appropriate one. It's a good bar to set. And it's right that numeracy and literacy and excellence is at the heart of everything that we do. But it's also important to note that excellent achievement comes in many different forms. It comes in academia, it comes in arts, it comes in sport, it comes in vocational expertise, and it comes in many other ways. And with reference to Councillor Stewart's point here, we should note this report as we're asked to do, but we also need to act on it. Councillor Stewart makes a great point. It's not just for noting, it is something that we need to pay attention to, and it's something that we need to act on. I commend this report, and if I can ask Councillor Carr to formally second it, please.
I formally second it.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. We have a comment from Councillor Leishman.
Thank you, Convener, and to Executive Director Devlin and your colleagues for the report. And also for the record, I'd like to add my praise and thanks to all the hardworking education staff employed by our council. The returning of such impressive pass rate figures after the pressures, challenges and upheaval of the last 2 to 3 years is nothing short of outstanding. Also, please record that praise for the previous committee and Councillor Shires as their convener. The biggest challenge we continue to face is how we address the impact that poverty has on educational attainment at all levels, especially now as we look to build an educational recovery post-pandemic. The pandemic highlighted societal inequalities, and with the demands on parents and children regards homeschooling. It also highlighted the role education and school plays in the shaping of young people's lives. For 2 years, exams were replaced by teachers' professional judgment, and speaking with teachers, they've told me that this trust and confidence was appreciated, and it was a welcome alternative to the SQA algorithm-based system of inbuilt bias against schools serving some of our poorest communities. Teachers have also told me that there is a growing demand for greater professional autonomy, and I believe the EIS has identified some key areas that would benefit from teacher empowerment, including providing more support for teacher learning communities, more consultation on curriculum matters, the devolving of more funding to schools, and greater parental involvement. Our teaching workforce is our greatest asset, and when empowered, their skills, along with the reformed method of testing and examinations, will be essential in helping close the educational attainment gap. And finally, if I can be permitted to be political for a second, then I wish to say that our teachers and workers from all industries that have suffered stagnation of wages deserve to see the increase in their pay packet that at very least doesn't see them become poorer. I appreciate, though, that is a conversation for another time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Leishman. I think you make good points there, particularly the one around the exam diet. It is noted that the attainment gap was narrower in 2020 and 2021, and I think that does give us an opportunity for conversation around that. Thank you. Councillor Bailey Ahern, please.
Thank you very much. I've said it already in one of my questions in regards to the work that's been done with the additional support needs parents network, but I think the work in here and the planned actions for our young people with additional support needs is very welcome. I'd be very interested in a year's time to see the progress we've made as a council in terms of our work with additional support needs pupils within the schools. And I just hope that our health service takes notice, especially the CALM service, who have a massive problem at the moment. And if some of the actions in here actually support our children in terms of either going through CALMs or having the support and CALMs take notice of what is being said by our teachers, I think it's all to the benefit of our pupils that have additional support needs. And I think in a year's time, it'd be very interesting to see the progress we've made.
Thank you, Billy Ahern. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Convener. I just wanted to say I very much welcome the report, and I thank the authors for bringing it to us today. There's lots of good information in the report and examples of how well Perth and Kinross Council does in terms of our educational offering. There are always opportunities to improve, I think, as you rightly identified, Convener, and I think that the Education and Children's Services and the Council have always acknowledged that. The performance in the past year and the planned improvements for next year are both very welcome, and I look forward to seeing how we get on in the forthcoming session. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. If there are no more comments, can we note that report, please?
Noted.
Noted.
Thank you very much. And we move on to paper 6, which is the school terms and holiday dates 23-24 and 24-25, which will be introduced by Sheena Devlin.
Thank you, Convener. This is the standard report seeking approval for the school terms and holiday dates here in Perth and Conross. Members are asked to note that the proposed pattern of holiday dates generally reflects the existing pattern. This pattern of dates provides operational and logistical benefits and provides certainty for parents and staff regarding the timing of school holidays. We've consulted with the trade unions, with staff and with others in relation to these dates, and these have been approved by the JNCT. It should also be noted that Good Friday and Easter Monday have been retained as school holidays in Perth and Conross, both in 23-24 and in 24-25. This report also acknowledges that it may be necessary from time to time to accommodate any additional closure dates if required throughout the school session. Convener, I should say that Karen Robertson, as key author of the report, is unfortunately unable to be with us, so you have a very substandard substitute in myself in that regard.
Thank you very much, Executive Director. Bale O'Hearn, you have a question, please.
Thank you, and I'll be easy on the Sheena and my question. It's one that's come up before, and it's one that parents have asked for a lot. Why are we restricting it to 3 years and not doing it further? Some parents book their summer holidays, especially years ahead, and it would be useful to have a longer timetable than just 3 years.
I don't know, but I will ask.
And neither do I, so we'll move on at this point, if that's okay.
I take it then it's a serious question. You know, why is it? And is that
serious answer? I honestly don't know.
Is that Scottish Government, or is it just?
I don't know, but I will ask and find out.
I know that there's no insinuation that it's not a serious question, but I think we just don't know the answer. Councillor Provost, please.
Thank you, Convener. And I share Bailey Ahern's point. It was going to be one of my questions. I have a further question, which I appreciate the Executive Director, having not written the paper, might not have the detail on, but I would like an answer after the committee if she doesn't, which is what discussions took place with our other neighbouring local authorities that aren't Dundee and Angus. I have raised this point before, since I have 3 neighbouring local authorities, none of which are Dundee and Angus, and Perth and Kinross has 8 in total. I appreciate actually that the dates this time fall quite nicely across all of the declared local authorities who are our neighbours. And I also appreciate, and I'm very grateful that we have included on the comparator this time all of our neighbouring local authorities, because that was a request I made before, so I'm grateful for that change. But I note that Highland haven't published theirs yet, but I was wondering whether we'd had a conversation with them. So I'm just curious about what conversations we did have with others.
Thank you, Provost. I'm not aware of the specifics of conversations that Karen Robertson may have had with colleagues, but I'm assuming that there have been some, given that she's been able to ascertain all of their holiday dates. And you will see that there is quite a lot of uniformity in relation to the timing of the holidays on this occasion as we're setting them. But I will ask Karen and ensure that in the note that we provide following this committee, that information is provided. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. I will formally move this report at this time and ask Councillor Frampton to second it, please.
I formally second the report.
Thank you, Councillor Frampton. Are there any comments on this report? Can we agree it then, please?
Agreed.
Thank you, Provost. Paper 7 is the appointment of members to the Perth and Conross Educational Trust Committee. I don't know if we want to do this now or later. I know that Councillor Frampton is keen to sit, and I'm quite happy to put myself forward for it as well. I don't know if any other members want to formally put themselves forward at this point. I think it is something that only sits really once a year.
I think in the absence of Caroline Charles, I will nominate her. I think she'd be quite keen to do that. Thank
that
you.
would be very welcome. Thank you, Councillor Duff. I'll ask Danny for advice. My understanding is we can have as many nominees as we like. It'll depend on who's available on the day to sit.
Yeah, just to answer a question there, Councillor Stewart. In the last council session, we had 10 elected members as members of the Educational Trust Committee.
And apologies to Councillor Liz Barrett. I know that, Danny, you did tell me earlier that you want to also put yourself forward for it, which is greatly appreciated and noted.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just before we finish off, I'd just like to echo some of the comments about staff and teachers and pupils and parents indeed who've home taught over the last 2 or 3 years. I think the exam results were very impressive and positive, and I think it's, although I have said it publicly already, I think it's important that this committee put on record our thanks to everybody involved in that. So thank you very much. And I think we are done. Thank you everybody for coming. Thank you for the questions. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thank you.